Alright, good morning. Let's go to work. Hey, James. There we go. So, I want to talk briefly about what we're teaching our children. I don't have children, so when I say that, I mean, what are we teaching your children? Or the children? There was a family gathering, I think it was around Christmas, with, my parents, my brother, his kids, and my niece, the youngest of the young people that are important to me in my life. She was, I think she was 6 at the time, 6 or 7. She was playing with something that her older brother wanted to play with as well. It was Christmas, so my guess is it was probably one of her toys. I don't know. But he wanted to play with it as well, and she was kind of pushing back, and so my mother chimed in, said, "Now, Rachel, you have to share." So, never wanting to miss an opportunity to corrupt the youth, I said, "Sharing's for suckers, right, Rachel?" And everybody, sort of like, "Craig, it's terrible." And I smiled, and she smiled, and of course that was the new phrase, "Sharing's for suckers." And her mother was not very impressed. But while I don't think that, we should teach kids not to share, I think instead what we should maybe try and focus on is to teach kids the fundamentals of give and take, right? So there's these books out called the Tuttle Twins, and they're like kids' books with a libertarian perspective. And, they basically teach kids simply, how the market works, right? How free market capitalism works, and how it's, it's foundational for liberty. So I think it'd be an interesting experiment if, starting at kindergarten, kids were taught that, look, if there's something you want and somebody else has it, you're going to have to offer them something that they want. Now, in a kindergarten setting, of course, in that setting, nothing belongs to any of the kids. It's communal. They belong to the school or the classroom, and everybody's supposed to make use of it and share. And so I understand that, but I think it would be a good lesson to teach kids that, if you want something from somebody, you need to provide something of value to them. And this line of thinking caused me to remember something that happened when I was, I think, in 3rd grade. Is it weird that I remember shit from 3rd grade? I don't know. People say, I don't remember anything that happened before I was like 12. I'm like, well, no, I remember this pretty vividly. A neighbor of mine and fellow classmate, Steven, I don't want to give his last name, he and I were walking to school and playing out in the schoolyard before the bell rang. And he had found this little rubber eraser thing that was obviously like a McDonald's Happy Meal toy. It was like a little rubber Ronald McDonald head, like a bust kind of thing that goes on the top of a pencil, right? And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Where'd you get that?" And he's like, "Oh, I found it." I'm like, "That's cool." Now, that morning, or not too long ago, I had found a St. Louis Blues team hockey card. I wasn't into hockey. I didn't care about it. But it was a card that I found that was in decent condition. Otherwise, I would have passed it up. So I just picked it up and put it in my pocket. And so I said, I'll trade you. I'll trade you this hockey card for that. And other kids were trying to, I guess it was something new nobody'd ever seen before. I don't know how. I mean, this is a Happy Meal toy. But all these other kids wanted to trade with them to get it. I'll give you this for that. I'll give you this for that. I'm like, hey, I'll give you this St. Louis Blues team card for it. It's like, okay, I like the St. Louis Blues. They're like my favorite team. Like, all right, cool. Trade. Fair and square, right? Well, then this kid who I remember as being a bit of a shit, his name was Paul, he starts, putting the worm in his ear. Oh man, that was a bad trade. That car's not worth anything. St. Louis Blues suck. And Steve was one of those kids, I guess, who could be easily influenced, right? And so he starts to come around to this thinking. He's like, yeah, I guess St. Louis does suck. Yeah, I guess it was a bad trade. And he wanted to trade back. He's like, come on, trade back. I'm like, no, man. Like, a deal's a deal. I remember using that exact phrase. Look, a deal's a deal. We made a trade. And I don't want to trade back. So the bell rings, we go into class, we sit down, and he sat in the little pod of desks. We have these little stupid little desks in a group of 6, all butted up against one another. So we're sitting in our pod, and he sits right next to me. He said, come on, man, trade back. I'm like, why do you care so much? You found it. We made a trade. A deal's a deal. I'm a little shit myself, so I just kept saying, a deal's a deal. Deal's a deal. And that was getting him more and more angry. And so everybody starts settling into their work, and he grabs my chair out from under me. No, I didn't fall down. I guess I was a ninja. But I go on my knees and I continue doing my work. And then Mrs. Smith, this old Scottish, well, she wasn't that old, but she was a Scottish lady. She goes, Craig, where's your chair? I'm like, Steve took it. Stephen, why did you take Craig's chair? Well, that just caused the waterworks to fly, and Stephen starts going nuts and just babbling incoherently about how I was being mean and yada yada yada. So anyway, he's crying and sniffling and snot's coming out of his nose. It was a terrible spectacle. And I'm just shaking my head the whole time. And so she takes him outside in the hall to get him to calm down and get him to explain the situation. And then a couple minutes later, she comes and gets me and asks me to come out to the hall. We were separated at that point. And she asked me to explain the situation, and I said, look, I traded a card for this thing, and now he doesn't like the trade. He changed his mind. He wants it back. I don't want to trade it back. She goes on, well, Craig, I know that you and Steve are friends, and I know you don't want to ruin your friendship, and is it really such a big deal if you just trade it back with him? Basically using her power as a teacher, her authority, to sort of influence me to take it back. And of course, you're 7, 8 years old, and you're not thinking that you're supposed to give an answer to something that is that nature of question. Adults generally ask yes or no questions. They don't ask questions that require you to think about the situation. So I didn't say anything, right? I was just sort of looking at her. And she's like, I'd really like it if you trade back with him, please. And at that point, I'm like, okay, so the powers that be are forcing me to trade back. Where am I going with this story? Anyway, so I traded back, and of course, Steve is trying for the rest of the day to be really good friends. He's trying to, patch up his friendship, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, buddy. And I guess my thought is, it would have been a teachable moment for Mrs. Smith to say, a deal's a deal. You know, say, look, don't enter into transactions with people unless you're sure. Or she could have just said, look, I don't give a rat's ass about a St. Louis Blues team card and a rubber eraser in the shape of Ronald McDonald. You kids sort it out yourself. Get back to work. That would have been good. But no. She decided to come down on the side of, oh, let's just be nice and be friends. And I guess in the long run, I guess it makes sense from an adult's perspective. It makes sense. But we're in third grade at this point, you know. At this point, these things, one should have enough sense of self to know what one's desires are and to know when they're going to engage in an interaction or a transaction that is amenable to them. And one shouldn't be so easily influenced by someone else so as to change one's mind so easily, I guess. I don't know. It was kind of a weird story that I remember. And it just got me thinking about, you know what? Teachers so often want to teach kids to be nice and to be cooperative. And I'm all for being cooperative, and you should teach children to be cooperative. But cooperation has to be mutually beneficial. It can't be forced. It can't be done, you know, out of forced magnanimity, if that's even a word. You can't force people to be nice. And I think children are done a disservice when they're taught that people should are going to just naturally be nice. Chances are in the world you're going to grow up, you're going to find out that people are generally nice, but there's always going to be conflict. There's always going to be people whose own interests are not going to coincide with your own interests. And in those situations, you need to negotiate. And that comes down to intellectual debate. It comes down to politics. It comes down to everything. Negotiating for a job, interviewing for a position. And the problem is that this kindergarten mentality is carried on up all the way up to the college level, because what you find now, and I know this is a long time coming, but what you find now is that kids are like petulant children. College students are petulant children. Articulate petulant children, to be sure, but they don't get their way after being told since the time they were, 5 years old, that everybody is friendly and everybody wants to cooperate and everybody is going to be good and nice to one another and everyone will be able to get their way and it's a fallacy. But they've been taught this from a very young age, and so now you have a generation of kids who become adults and don't realize that in the real world people are going to disagree with you and people are not going to negotiate with your best interests in mind, so that you need to be cognizant of, when you're engaging in a transaction, that your needs are being met. Anyway, it's just kind of weird. I think it would be a good idea for teachers, even at the grade school level, to start teaching kids that if they want something, they need to provide something of value to somebody else, instead of teaching them just sharing, cooperation the whole time. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. Talk to you.